All right. Hey, everyone. I am Ashley Little with Wholesaling Out of the Box, and I'm joined today by Cameron Peters, Jacob McPherson, and Shawn Bowen to discuss Chapter 9 of Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. Chris was an FBI negotiator for 24 years before retiring and starting the Black Swan Group, which helps businesses learn how to better negotiate, both within their company and without their company or externally. So without further ado, Shawn, go ahead, take it away.
All right, welcome back, guys. Thanks for joining us again, and just going to jump right into it here. So chapter 9 is talking about the 3 types of negotiators, and we'll go through those 3 types, and then we'll talk about those 3 types. So the analyst, the accommodator, and the assertive. So as we go through these, we'll kind of break them down and let the team go around and talk about what they feel as though they are, and then they also recognize as the different types of people they come against or talk to, right? So let's talk about the analyst first. Cares about confirming facts and info. The negotiation mindset would be time equals preparation, and silence equals time to think. So characteristics is methodical and diligent, hates surprises, self-image tied to minimizing mistakes, prefers to work on their own, reserved problem solver, information, I can't, how to say that right?
Aggregator.
Damn, get that one right. Skeptical by nature, may appear to agree when just agreeing to think about it, slow to answer calibrated questions, apologizes, have little value. So apologies are very, very meaningless, and hypersensitive to reciprocity. When they receive first, they think it must be a trap. When they give first, they expect to be reciprocated. So tools, oh, sorry about that. All right. So then tools to use are labels, specifically to compare analysis, use data to explain your reason, to no ad lib, use data comparisons to disagree. And then the worst type match is an assertive. So let's go through this and start with Cam. What were your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, sure. So I definitely identify with being an accommodator. I'm definitely always looking for kind of a win-win, kind of a peaceable sort of solution, right? Always listening and feeling out what the other person's looking to get, honestly, and asking those questions to get those questions or get the actual motivation, the actual whys out of the person. I would say the type of negotiator I least like to talk to is the analyst, because the numbers. I don't identify with that. I can shift to that, but it's not my primary set. I prefer to get to the heart of the why, right? Why is this going on? How do you feel about this? What are you doing next? How's the family doing? This sort of thing. So I would say identify with the accommodator, and I struggle with the analyst a little bit. And then the assertive type, these don't bother me at all. I'd rather deal with an assertive. I'd rather them be barking and overbearing, and because then I can just listen and get as much information as possible, because they just spew it all out and they want to control the conversation. And then there's just the little labels in there and the little mirrors that just keep them talking. Honestly, I find them to be the easiest to talk to. That's just my overview thoughts, I guess, on these.
Nice. Jacob.
I think I can talk to analysts probably pretty well, because that's me for sure. No, so like it's just the idea that I really like details, right? I like understanding the entirety of the process before actually making a decision on something. And I can see why, Cam, you would say that you dislike talking to analysts the most, because like I know that I can be difficult, and I definitely know that people that I know that are analysts can be difficult, and I'm one. So, and I don't even necessarily like dealing with them either when they come up, because it's always wanting to understand every single aspect of the deal and how you're going to solve the problem, and which happens to be something that I can relate to, because that's how my brain works. But I can definitely see how that would be really, really frustrating. and trying to get us to make a decision before understanding all of the information and the details and the data that goes into it is like almost next to impossible. So you guys know that just based on trying to make me make decisions, and then all of a sudden I'm asking you a million questions of how all that's going to come about and so on. And then usually by the end of that, you guys are all frustrated because I deep dove too much. So without deep diving too much, I'll take the scuba gear off and we can keep going. But I can definitely relate to Analyst and Accommodator. I think we can talk about moving forward after we go over it, as well as excuse me, as well as oh my god, assertive.
Nice. Ashley, do you mess around with this or feel like this helps on your side of the house at all?
Yeah. So I think I'm kind of like Cam. I'm an accommodator, but I also have a oh my gosh, I forgot, an analyst lean. So for the most part, I don't like confrontation. I don't like to do the negotiating and stuff like that, but sometimes I have to. And then I'm always writing them and I'm like, hey, what do I say next? And they'll help me out a little bit. Because I just don't, I mean, I understand why we negotiate because everyone is just trying to do their job. But to me, I'm kind of like, yeah, I'd rather everyone just be happy and be able to get, what they need for the deal or for whatever. But sometimes it just doesn't fall that way. But I do have, like I said, that analyst lean where I do kind of like, I like to know every little bit of what's happening. I like to be able to understand everything fully before we sort of jump in. And that's not always possible. So I have to sort of push that away. But yeah, and then sometimes we do get those assertive negotiators, and then I sort of just, it shuts me down a little bit because I'm like, I really don't know what to do here. I'm not willing to deal with you right now. You need to calm down is sort of where it goes.
Nice. So I think on a follow-up, and everybody here can probably agree, and those that have probably heard from all of anything you've ever listened to, you probably recognize me as the assertive. But I like to think that I do really well with mixing the assertive and the analyst in to the conversations. I think it's just a mixture, but if you were to overall look at it, I would definitely be the assertive. I also like to think that when I do back into things, I look at it from an analyst mindset, because I also like to try to understand and figure things out. And that's been over time and years that I've pushed that, but I feel like everybody here would probably say, yes, I would be recognized as the assertive, right? So a little bit of Mary of everything, but again, this all is all part of this book that I was able to read. You guys are reading and understanding probably why and where things are the way I do it and where I've learned or grown into where I have. So hopefully people that are reading this, you guys can figure out what you are and what you probably recognize or I guess you see yourself being, but maybe you have to grow into little pieces. So, all right, let's move on to the next one.
Oh,
so,
before we move on, I did want to say, I just going over some of the characteristics of the assertive is perfecting the solution is less important than getting it done. And I think if you have seen us in our company, you can kind of see that from like me versus Shawn. And we keep joking that Shawn is like full throttle on a lot of his ideas, especially lately. He's he's like, really, let's go. And I'm like, no, we can't go yet. So it's that compromise of being able to, or being willing to go both styles, sort of where you're going faster than the accommodator wants, but slower than the assertive wants.
That's a good talk. For those people that are learning to grow companies and learning how to grow teams, there's recognizing your strengths and your weaknesses, right? So Ashley's good at what she does, and the rest of the team, everybody's good at what they do, and that's the value that everybody brings to a team. So knowing each side of that has to be able to complement the other one. So like, I can't be the guy that's all the time being like, let's go. And then like, you just fucking broke it. Like, calm down. Like, I get it. Right. And that's good to have people like that, but also the opposite. It's good to have that feeling so that you're not just always steady. So that's a really good follow-up. I like that. That's cool. All right, let's get into the next one. So accommodator cares about building relationships. The negotiating mindset is time equals relationship building. Silence is upsetting and indicates anger. The characteristics would be happy when communicating, sociable, peace-seeking, optimistic, distractible, poor time managers, watch tone and body language. They won't express hesitancy in words. Risk, may overpromise, agree to give you something that they can't actually deliver. The tools to use on this is what and how, and calibrated questions focused on implementation. And the worst type match is accommodator for accommodator, because they're all trying to accommodate. So let's talk about that. Jacob, take the lead on that one. What your thoughts are here?
So I think this is my second half. I think I'm analyst and accommodator for sure. The reason I say that is that when I'm out in a property walkthrough, even when I'm on the phone, I have no issue carrying on a conversation almost until the end of time, to the point where like I'll know that I have to make other calls after the fact, and I still just like will feel bad if I end a call abruptly. So that's just something that actually stands out to me. I would definitely say building relationships is key here. So it's definitely hard when you're on a property walkthrough talking to another accommodator, because it's, like you kind of just said, right? Like both of you are trying to accommodate the other person and you don't want to be rude. And that's why silence is always awkward. And if you've ever been in a discussion and then all of a sudden you've said something and the conversation has gone silent, and in your gut, you're kind of like, oh shit, I shouldn't have said that, or I definitely just screwed up. You're probably right. Right. So I think it's a very difficult thing to do. And if you're not a very talkative person with an accommodator and you're not getting them to open up about themselves, I think the key here is going back to your rapport and allowing that person the time that is necessary for them to open up and talk about what's going on and why and what the issues are, and let them talk about their grandmother and their dog that passed away, or is going to the vet. Let them talk about all those things, because that's what makes them feel better about themselves and about the situation, is them just being allowed to talk and to ultimately build a relationship. So but just be aware that if you're not cognizant of your time while all of that is happening, then you may also end up wasting a lot of time as well. So I think that that's one of the traps that you can fall into with accommodators. It's one of those things where I think you almost have to be assertive to a certain extent, and you have to state a couple of things as far as them respecting your time as well, right? When you're on a property walkthrough, when you're on the phone. And I think the key there is just make sure that how you're saying it comes across correctly, because I think that how you frame things to an accommodator is going to go a long way on how it's received and how that relationship continues moving forward.
Cool. Cam.
Yeah, I think on the accommodator, I actually enjoy talking to an accommodator myself. But like Jacob said, you kind of got to be mindful about how long you can do it, because I can do it for a long time as well. Mm-hmm. And I like to throw in little, I use the calibrated questions a lot because it keeps them talking. And the whole sounds like, seems like, feels like sort of thing to keep them talking, and to lead them down a path, but still look for little signs that you're going in the right direction, right? And you're not just shooting the breeze for 45 minutes for no reason. But I do feel as though when you're talking with an accommodator, that's really important to them to establish that relationship. You got to see it through. You got to talk about fishing or whatever, right? You bring it back to the house a little bit, then you talk about something else. You got to keep going down the path with them. I think that's really important. But between a mirror here and there and the calibrated questions, it can almost go on until they're done with it. And usually when they're done with it, I find they're ready to talk business.
Very cool. Ashley.
Yeah. Well, I told this story before we got on here too, but I'll tell you guys. So my friend and I are both sort of accommodators, and it gets really bad when we're trying to do things like choose a restaurant to go to the point her husband would get super upset. And now she has a decision maker app that makes the decision for us so that we don't have to both be like, oh, well, where do you want to go? Oh, well, where do you want to go? Sort of thing. But I do want to really point out the silence part, because that is, for an accommodator, it does kind of indicate like, oh, they're upset with me or they're mad or something. So going silent on an accommodator, like forgetting to do follow-ups or returning calls, that could lose you the deal, because then they're thinking, okay, this relationship isn't what I thought it was. Can I even trust this person? They're mad at me. What did I do? There's a lot going through accommodators' heads with that. So just making sure that, I think more so with Accommodator than any of the other types, that you are keeping up contact and that you're keeping that relationship, because like we've said a few times now, that relationship is the most important part of the deal to them. It's not who's going to get me the most money, it's who do I have the best relationship with.
Very good feedback. Very good feedback.
Shawn, I actually have one more thing I want to point out too, based on what Cam said.
Okay.
So when it comes to the characteristics, one of the big things here is watch tone and body language, because they won't express hesitancy in words. So I think a really good bring up, because Cam was talking about it and it clicked into my head when he was talking about labeling. So when you are on a property walkthrough, or at least when you have the opportunity to observe somebody who's an accommodator, make sure that you're really paying attention to their body language as you are talking to them. And I know that in one of the previous episodes, we had a really good talk on body language, and that'll go a long way if you go back and you listen to that previous episode. But in this particular case, I think that if you see an accommodator basically agreeing, but their body language is saying otherwise, that's usually a sign that they're not comfortable with some part of what you have discussed. So if you notice that and you can pick up on it, I think at that given time, it's a great opportunity for you to say something along the lines of like, hey, I feel like I kind of missed something. Like, did I get everything? Like, is there any part of this that makes you uncomfortable, or is there anything that I may have missed that you would still like to discuss? Right? When you see an accommodator go into that closed body language, that silent setting, go back and cover yourself with a label and see if you can get them to open up about what that issue may be. Because if you don't do that, I promise you, you will not be able to solve whatever it is to the point where you're going to get the deal. You have to go at that head on. The only way you're going to do that is if you're actually watching their body language or noting that they're silent over the other end of the phone.
Good stuff. I like it. All good feedback all the way around. All right, so let's move on to the next one, which is the assertive. So cares about being heard. Negotiating mindset is time equals money, and silence equals opportunity to speak more. Characteristics that these display are perfecting the solution is less important than getting it done. Loves winning above all else, most likely to get tunnel vision. If focus on a goal, you miss opportunities to explore options. Emotions can cloud decision-making facilities or faculties. I don't know why I can't read.
Faculties. Yeah.
View negotiations as intellectual sparring. I love that part. Verbal judo. And focus first on what they have to say. They'll only listen if they're convinced you understand them. The tools to use: calibrated question, labels, summaries. Get a "that's right." Be careful with reciprocity. If you give an inch, they will take a mile. And the worst type is the analyst to match these people up against.
So before everyone else asks question or answers, I want you to kind of talk about, as our only assertive, Shawn, like your experience with this, because some of these things really like down to a T.
Oh yeah, totally. And
This is the whole time equals money thing.
Oh, totally. Like time value of money is a massive piece that is just in life purpose, right? So like whether it's indicated here as a negotiation, but just in general, I use that quote over everything, right? Small things. Time value of money, is it worth having a dumpster at your home to dump things into? Is
it to pick up firewood yourself?
Oh, exactly. Like, should I go pick up firewood myself and take the time to rent the truck and deal with the assholes at Home Depot and all things above, versus like, oh, I'll just pay $200 and it's done, right? So like that kind of stuff. Or I pay $35 to get my grass cut versus me cutting it. You know what I mean? Like there's these small things that time value money goes into. Yes, that is totally one of my go-tos. Silence equals opportunity to speak more. I don't think I do push that too much. I think I go the other way, because sometimes I will shut up and let other people think, which is actually me thinking more. Loves to win above all else. I think that does definitely register with me. Perfecting the solution is less important than getting it done. That's exactly what you said before, which is I'm 100 miles an hour on the throttle, and Ashley's like making it organized, right? So it's like the marry up of two with the company and everybody, you know, between Cam or Jacob and everybody saying like, great, good idea. Like just slow the fuck down for a second. Like, let us put it together. What are some other ones on here? View negotiating as intellectual sparring. Yes, totally. Premise of this book, right? Like this book is a prime example of why I like it. I like the verbal judo. I like the challenge of thinking that the intellectual part of this is where I enjoy, and knowing like you say one thing and it comes back at you, you're like, all right, like you got it. So it's all of that that totally mirrors to me. And I am a sucker for a lot of this, and I know it's happening sometimes if I actually think about it and shut up and listen, but the labels all the time, calibrated questions all the time. Being careful with reciprocity. If you give an inch, take on a mile. I don't think I do that as much as that's right is definitely one that I can get. It can be used on me all the time because it's the yes, I am right, and you're like, you asshole. So, and you play it a little bit of marry on both of them, but yes, I totally agree. I would marry up to this. I would say for me, understanding how I address, even with analysts, I do kind of marry that up with myself because I do like asking questions. I do like knowing numbers. I do calibrated questions on the number side of things, but not as deep dive as the true analyst description gives. I don't go that far. That is definitely Jacob's wheelhouse. He does way better than that. But again, it's the difference between the people, how you're talking to recognize these talkers or these type of people. So I agree. That is a big one. It is totally like stand me in front of a mirror and like, boom, there it is. Couldn't be any more blatant. So Cam, let's hear about what you think on this.
Like I said, I definitely like talking to the assertives because it gives me a chance to learn everything and not honestly talk too often. And so when they call up, I especially like them when they call up and they're upset that we've sent them mail, or, are you going to give me a retail lead or are you going to insult me? I'm not sure. I mean, how would I be assaulting you? Just the questions to just go back and, well, this so-and-so did this and so-and-so did that. And I just sit back in my chair and just smile and be like, okay, let's go. And just listen and just ask those calibrated questions because like it says here, they, they always want to win. And so that's where you go through the negotiating and knowing that you're going to have to move a little bit and let them win a little bit, right? You're not going to definitely stand toe to toe with an assertive and not budge. Like you better be ready to budge or you're going to make a bad offer, honestly, because you're going to probably be too high. But I enjoy them because I think that they will tell you almost everything you need to know about whatever it is that you may be talking about. I would be careful with the inch and the mile thing too, though, because if you give just a little bit too much, they're definitely looking to get more. They're like, wait, I just got that. Let me grab a little bit more. Let me see how much free dessert I can get, right? So that's what I'm careful about. When somebody's barking on the phone and they're definitely being the A-type, I'm like, okay, don't give too much, but let them win, right? It's like a delicate balance between giving them the whole cake. So, yep.
Awesome. Jacob.
I think assertives throw me off probably 9 times out of 10. I think that's the accommodator in me, though. Like I would say I've gotten more FUs, and I would bet you almost every single one of them were the assertive type, and that's because I'm accommodator and analyst. Because somebody gets on the phone with me and they start going off, my first reaction is like, I don't even know you, man. Like you just called me out of nowhere. Like what the F, And that's my initial reaction every time I get somebody who's just ready to scream and yell. So getting past all of that, because I'm aware of it, so I try not to do it very often. It's one of those things where anytime I get somebody on the phone like this, I have to have that moment in my head where I kind of recognize it, and I got to sit back and kind of do what Cam said, right? I've got to just be like, oh, okay, like if you want to talk about that, let's go, right? So go ahead. Like I'm here, I'll listen, that's fine. So in the idea of hearing them, and then it's usually they like the conversation moving quickly, right? And those are some of the things that I've had to learn and that I've definitely missed in the past. There's a couple of really good calls actually of me basically just like totally screwing up because I wasn't getting past that part, right? So these are the guys that are wanting to move through the conversation quickly. And for somebody like me who's an analyst, I definitely don't want to do that because I want to talk about every freaking detail under the sun. So tell me about the blades of grass on the property, you know, like, so whereas those guys are literally just like, dude, I don't have time for this shit. Like, what are you going to offer and how are we going to make this work? And if you can't get to that number, don't bother. Right. Those are these types of guys, I feel like 9 times out of 10 that it's tough for me to talk to. So, but definitely good to recognize these types of things, especially for anybody who's listening. If you know that you're an analyst or an accommodator and you've got somebody who's assertive, it's really, really hard. But if you try to recognize that and you try to change it, it's definitely achievable. So, and there are times where I think everybody at a certain point is all 3 of these. Like there are times in my own day and in my own life where I have been assertive. It's usually out of nowhere. And I don't know why, but it tends to be like a mood all of a sudden that I happen to be in for the day. But I'm just like, boom, let's go. Let's get it done. Come on, moving on. Like, got it. Right. But I can't do that all the time. I don't know why. I wish I could, because if I could, then I probably have more effectiveness with these types of people. But I just don't. I think that when it comes to assertive types, you and Cam and Ashley are probably better handling it than what I am.
All right, Ashley, do you play with this on your side?
Sometimes. Okay. And what I want to say about this is that sometimes it's fun to watch 2 assertive types like together, because all it goes into is it turns into a measuring contest. And like I've seen this even in real estate time and time again. And it'll be like in person, it'll be listening to conversations on the phone. And I'm like, oh my God, just why is this necessary? Can we, everyone's trying to win, everyone's trying to prove something. And I'm like, can we just move on? What is the point? And it's so funny to see that, because I think it really is a lot of assertive types. They just need the win. But if you are also an assertive type, you need the win too. So you're like, I'm not going to give them a win, because if I give them an inch, they're going to take a mile and then they're going to win the whole thing. It's like, you know, they may have won the battle, but I'll win the war sort of thing. And that's what the mentality is. But I think, I don't know, like I said, I get kind of thrown when assertive types come and like really come at me on my side. But I'm also sort of like, well, you know, why don't we just, I'll take a look at this and we can talk about it later. And I sort of deflect because I'm not willing to put up with that.
I love it.
But yeah,
Right.
So that's what I have on the assertive types.
Okay.
This reminded me of, you know, during the times when we could still socialize, like physically in real estate environments. And, you know, Ashley and Jacob and I would see Shawn with another assertive and be like, let's just get a beer and sit back and watch.
Get the popcorn.
That's what, and I can name names, but I won't. And I think you guys know names anyways. So anyways, good times, good flashbacks.
Good flashbacks. I like it. I know exactly what scenario you're talking about. That's good though, to be recognizing and recognize when it happens. But it's also good to know that and know when, if you can step back. Because like you said, Jacob, and Cam, you mentioned it too, right? Like you got people that can just come at you and they just won't shut up, and you can label and mirror the hell out of them, and they'll just keep going.
Mm-hmm.
I like it. All right. Let's get to the next part of this, which is deflecting the punch. So if your counterpart starts with an extreme anchor, prepare to deflect by saying no with a calibrated question. And that would sound like, instead of saying, no, I can't do that, it would sound like, how am I supposed to do that? Deflecting the anchor with a calibrated question. What are we trying to accomplish here? What is the end result? Pivoting between terms. Taking a detour to the non-monetary issues. Let's put price off to the side for a moment. Let's talk about what would make this a good deal. What else would be what else would you be able to offer to make that a good price for me? And then responding with your own extreme anchor. So a big part of this is communication is 7% content, 38% tone of voice, and 55% body language. So I think I want to talk just to that for a hot second, is that one of these pieces is how do you read body language over the phone? And you can't. You are understanding between tone inflection, right? The way that things are being said, the responses of how quick and fast, or they're inflection in their voice of whether they're talking really high pitched or if they're talking very low. And then as you say something, maybe they overtalk you. That would be a piece of, I think, body language that we have to use on the phone versus in person. So let's go around here and talk about this for a minute on Cam. We'll get you to start us off here. What do you feel about the deflecting punch part?
My favorite's the extreme anchor. And I'll use that when, the whatever they're talking about is just really unrealistic, right? And I just want to see, and the point of it is not the number that's thrown out. The point of it is to see if there's any budge in there and how far they'll go, or at least maybe they'll talk about what's unrealistic, right? Or what's just absurd to them. And maybe that number that I throw out is absurd, right? And I did this just today, and I wish Kaylee was on here because Kaylee did a extreme anchor just the other day. We were talking about it as well. And they work. And sometimes you got to throw it out there, especially if you guys are way far apart, just to see if there's any value left in that conversation. So this is the one I identify with most here.
Cool. Jacob.
The one I most identify with is definitely let's put price off to the side for a moment and talk about what would make this a good deal. I remember when I first got into wholesaling with you back in the wholesaling out of the box days. I think it was Steve actually had shared a video. It was Shawn Terry who was going over basically a seller call actually. And this was, he was talking about boxing in the deflection basically. So he was talking about boxing in the issue that the seller had. And in this particular case, one of the ways that he would do that is if price was the issue, he would say, Mr. Seller, I think price is really important, but if it's okay, I'd like to put that off to the side for a minute. What else outside of price would be a concern for you, right? Or what else could you offer? Like in this case, obviously it's the other way around because Shawn is the one who's trying to negotiate with the seller, right? But once I heard that, boxing in the objection is what he was referring to. And that was just one really, really great way of doing that. So I think price is really important, but I also would like to talk about some other things that would come along with that. Can we discuss that? So that's basically what I would do. And that's what resonates most with me in this portion of it.
Cool. Ashley, do you use this on your side at all?
Yeah, my biggest thing is what are we trying to accomplish here? And I don't necessarily say it like that, but a lot of, okay, well, what is the point? Why are we doing this? We did it today. Cam was talking to someone and or maybe it was yesterday, but we were talking about the same person. And I was like, honestly though, what is he trying to get? Like, what is his point here? I don't understand. Because A, it helps me kind of better understand where to go from there. But B, I think it helps the person that I'm asking understand too, where they're coming from so that we can sort of meet better in the middle and solve whatever problem we're working on.
Like it. So I think one of the pieces that a lot of people are recognizing in this is, or I'm hearing, is a lot of pivoting, right? To certain pieces. The extreme anchor is the one Cam talked about, but pivoting to take things away off the table seems to be what Jacob's is. So, okay, good. I like this one. This is good. So let's move over to the Ackerman bargaining. So I don't know if us as a company will be able to really deep dive this as much because we don't use this piece unless you guys are doing it. I know that when we originally started in talking, we don't go off of this, but I think it can work. I can see where the numbers work here, and you guys tell me if you think I'm wrong, but I don't know if we play with this too much. Y'all agree?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't know that we use it really often.
So a quick talk to it would be steps for negotiating prices is set a target price. Plan your offers as a buyer side going from 65% to 85% to 95 to 100. And then from seller from 135 to 115 to 105 to 100. A final offer at a non-monetary item to show that you're at your limit. Using an accusation audit to preempt the offer to take the edge off. You're going to think, I haven't done all my homework. These are examples. You're going to feel insulted by my offer. I'm embarrassed to even tell you my offer. And then using tactical empathy. So find ways of creating space between yes and no to get to the counter before you increase your offer. Use precise non-round odd numbers. So I think the beginning part of Ackerman's bargaining, like you can take out the percentage parts But we can all address I know we do this as a company because I know that we talk about it in training, and when we actually learn to talk about what we're doing different, then this is a piece of that. So a lot of them, I hear them on calls. Cam says it. I really don't think I want to give you my offer because it's just flat out low. I don't think we use the embarrassed part as much, but you're going to think, I haven't done my homework, I don't think we use that, but you're going to think this is absolutely ridiculous what I'm about to say. So I don't want to offend you. Using the tactical empathy is finding ways of creating space between yes and no to get the counter offer before you increase it. I think if you could go to the buyer side, we would say, is that really the best you can do? Or the seller side, is that the least you can do? Those words we do use a lot. And then the use precise non-round numbers. That's always a favorite of mine. Ashley hates it because it jacks up paperwork, but using a number of $47,321.62. How'd you come up with that number, right? That seems as that's a very calculated number. It's a very specific number, right? Which it's not. It's just one in my head. But for the seller, that could be a very specific, and for a buyer, it could be very specific. So pieces of this, I think we can run through this one pretty quick though. So Jacob, what do you think?
I don't really have much else to add other than what you just covered. The only thing I will say is that if you're going to go with the precise non-round odd number, do that at the end. Like when you're on the final number, don't do it on, numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4, so to speak, or I guess 1, 2, and 3. I wouldn't use that until the very end of the negotiation, because the whole idea of that is to make it seem like, hey man, I'm literally working backwards from a calculation and this is the best I can do. This is what that number comes out to. You've literally squeezed every single inch out of me and that's it. That's my final number. So the odd number thing is a really, really great tactic. I think it works well. Just know that don't do that unless you're, a few offers in.
Okay, Cam?
Yeah, definitely. I use a version of the, you're going to be insulted by my offer. And, that's just, I mean, look, I don't want to insult you, man. I don't want you to get upset. Okay. I'm not even close to where you are. So I don't even know if it's worth talking about. And just pull back and let the silence do the thing. And honestly, sometimes they're going to be like, oh, okay, well, talk to you later. Or they're going to be like, well, I mean, I still might want to hear it. Right. But at least it's taken the sting out of the insult, or what you might, where they might have not got upset, right? And they might ask you why, you know what I mean? Where are you getting this from? So it's a version of that. That's really, honestly, that's the major part I use here. And sometimes the precise run numbers, but I do agree with what Jacob says. It might start at 85,000, right? And then it might move to 92, and then it might move to just up a little bit. And then it might end at $93,412. And they're like, whoa. I'm like, dude, I'm squeezing every penny here. Okay. And so, yeah, that's a good point, Jacob, for sure.
Cool. Ashley.
Yeah. So I think with this, my biggest takeaway is that those percentages for the negotiation, the 65 to 85, et cetera, we don't do that. It's more kind of feeling out what the seller is doing, or this is what we teach. So if you're negotiating back and forth and the seller goes from 65 to 60, then you need to sort of mirror that and be able to jump $5,000. But if the seller goes from 65 to 55, then you need to jump 10 grand. You just need to see how they're doing it, because the way that you need to kind of let them lead in that respect, because then the negotiation will still feel like on any side. So if you're assertive, it feels like a win because they're coming up by the same amount. If you're an accommodator, it feels like you're being accommodated. And if you're analytical, that exact amount increase feels right. So by doing that, you're able to appease any of the negotiating types and to continue working together to get to a number that works for everyone.
Awesome.
Shawn, one final thing, because I think that this is really important to talk about. If you're somebody who is new to acquisitions and new to talking to sellers and new to negotiation, it seems like everybody is always afraid to give an anchor price when they're first starting out. I know I was that way. I was like scared. Like if I knew that my maximum allowable offer was 100 grand, but I, wanted to start somewhere around like 70 or 80, I felt so weird and just awful about it. So I think that one thing to help get you through that, if it's your very first time, something that you're not used to, definitely use that accusation audit to preempt that. because not only is it going to make the seller feel better about it, it's not only going to take the sting out there, but it's actually almost psychologically going to have an effect on you as well. And it's going to make you feel better about it, because if you do that, the seller, I think, and Cam, you can tell me if you agree with this, actually everybody can, but I think like probably 9 times out of 10, most of the sellers that I've hit an accusation audit with before I've given them a number have almost like begged me to come back with the offer, or have been something along the lines of like, no, like, it's okay. I'm not going to be offended. I'm not going to be upset. And once I heard those words, it made me feel like it was okay to give the offer at that point. So if you're worried about it, if you're nervous about it, start with the accusation audit and try that out, because I think it'll make you feel better about giving that initial price anchor.
I like it a lot. All right, I think that'll do it for us on this one.
Yeah. So thanks everybody for tuning in to our discussion of Chapter 9 of Never Split the Difference. Join us again next week as we discuss Chapter 10. We're almost to the end now. And if you're interested in finding out more about us, our company, any of the products we sell, go to www.wholesalingoutofthebox.com, and we'll catch you on the next one. Thanks, guys.